Okay,
We'll get you.
I see that it's 4:03, so I'm going to call the November 23rd, 2020 Select Board meeting to order. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo,
Present?
Ms. Ackerman,
Present.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Present.
Mr. Johnson,
Present.
myself, Ms. Bates, present.
Okay, thank you very much. Appears that we're all here. Consent agenda. I will read minutes to approve October 13th, 2020, November 2nd, 2020. Town accountant warrants for November 19th, 2020. Gift acceptance from John and Arlene Lay for $400 for the Council on Aging gift account, and we thank you very much. And a proclamation for November 28th, 2020, a Small Business Saturday to shop locally. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I just had a revision to the minutes of October 13th.
Okay. Let's have
And I submitted it to Jeremy over the weekend.
all
So
right.
it was included in the version that I sent out today, back out to the board, and then I also publicly posted.
Okay, thanks. I clearly with my email situation, I have not seen that.
Somewhere
Okay,
in the
just
24
trying to make sure it got through. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right. So do I hear a motion to,
Move to approve the consent agenda.
okay. In a second? All right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
and myself, Ms. Bates, aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous and the chair so declares. The town manager's report.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. Very briefly tonight, I think we've hit a pretty significant turning point here during the pandemic. I think if you've been watching the case data, I think Susan Rask's presentation last week was eye-opening, and as she predicted, we did move into the yellow category, although as she noted, that is somewhat offset, if you will, by the situation at MCI Concord, which has a relatively high number of cases. But the non-MCI Concord cases, the just local case numbers are also increasing in noticeable ways. And so I think, I know the governor has been watching this data. It's certainly not unique to Concord. Many places, I guess if you're looking for indices, if you look at the map, everybody was going red. And so they changed the metric slightly to fix for population in the test reporting data. And then people went back down to lower risk categories. And now towns are going back up. And I think that's just a nationwide circumstance, but certainly Massachusetts. So we are really closely monitoring this. We are kind of talking about, from an organizational standpoint, we've tried to remind people not to travel for Thanksgiving, certainly this week, but the holidays, and to continue to make the difficult choices to protect themselves and others. I think that's a message that the governor has been kind of reinforcing for the entire Commonwealth. I would make the same message here, but we are monitoring the situation. Things are really changing somewhat rapidly now. So I guess I would just say people, should continue to monitor our website and our social media for any potential changes in town operations as a result of increased restrictions. I think we mentioned Small Business Saturday. I think it is important to support local businesses. If you look at I think Susan presented some information. When you look at where the infection rates are happening, it's in small gatherings, it's in people's homes. So getting out and getting takeout or even dining in, are not areas where we're seeing, or schools are not areas where we're seeing high rates of spreading. And so it's important to just make sure that we do the safe things at home. And so I think, like I said, travels, a couple of states were added, including New Hampshire, to the restricted travel list from Massachusetts. So things are really tightening up a little bit, and I would expect that to probably continue because, a couple of different factors. The first being colder weather and limiting outdoor activities that would otherwise be viewed as a safer alternative to gather, or a safer way to do a gathering. And the second is college students returning from school, probably through the end, starting in this week through the end of the calendar year anyway. And I know Susan Rask has sent out some guidance about how to, manage that and try and do that safely. But I think the important point is people really need to be mindful right now and just make sure that they're paying attention to the governor's guidance. And if as a result, we have to change our local standards, that as well at the local level. And then, from a operations standpoint, Friday, the day of Thanksgiving, is a holiday for the town offices. And so we're closed. But certainly I think most people are still working remotely, even when they're during holidays. So certainly for the board, if you need something over the weekend, don't hesitate to reach out. But just for the community, town offices we're closed to the public anyway, but we won't even answer the phone on Friday. It's a holiday.
Jane.
Just one point of public information, because sometimes it gets lost. As you said, the town offices are closed, but garbage pickup will happen for Thursday on Friday.
Yes, there is a delay in trash collection. I don't know the routes that well, but people should check CPW's recycling and solid waste collection page to make sure they get that schedule.
Yeah.
Good point. Any other questions? And I know that was very brief, but we're really consumed by the changing dynamics of the public health data right now.
Okay, no other questions. I'll move on to the chair's remarks. My remarks are also limited. This week or early next week, if you haven't already received a letter that was sent from the Tax Relief Committee for the annual appeal for tax relief, as well as the Hugh Cargill. They send out a joint letter, and on one side of the letter is the appeal for the tax relief for citizens who need that kind of assistance, and on the reverse side is an appeal for Hugh Cargill. So we hope people will respond to that letter. Thank you. So the next item is a priority list of CPA projects. Each year, it's been the tradition for the select board to be asked to look at the town projects in particular and to rank them in terms of their sense of priority order. And so we have before us a list of those projects, and I'm open for some comment on that, and we'll try to, I'm going to keep track of your aggregate comments and pull them together so that we can forward them.
Linda, I don't know if it might be helpful, since I'm the liaison to the Community Preservation Committee, to just maybe provide a little bit of background on the discussion to date on some of these. Sure. And the preliminary findings of the group. Just quickly, because there are some that they've already kind of proposed to have a full funding recommendation. And so it would really come down to whether or not, we had any objections to that. And is it okay if I share my screen?
I would just interrupt you, if I may, just briefly. I think it's going to be helpful to hear the input that you have to provide us. I think in looking at how this has worked in the past, our ratings are somewhat independent of where they are in their discussions. And what ends up happening is that both sets of actions end up informing each other, and they change often greatly between their initial review and when it ends. That may not be the case this year, but I just want to provide that additional context. But please go ahead. That would be helpful.
Okay. And is it all right if I share a screen for a second?
Yes.
Okay. So here is everyone able to see this project list spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one is the housing production plan update that's scheduled to begin next year, and CPA funds are often used by towns to support these every 5-year updates. So that's been recommended as a full funding. Second one is a regional housing services program. For years, the CPC has provided funding towards that effort, and so that regional housing services office, so that's fully funded. The third is the affordable, yes? Okay, I'm keeping going then. The third is the Housing Development Corporation, the Affordable Housing Buy Down. Basically, they're looking for $500,000. Their buy down funds are more or less depleted after having done the Habitat for Humanity project. And so the group, this $125,000 number is not really intended to be the number that they recommend. It's just the minimum amount that would be needed. They're not sure they can come up with the full 500, but they know they need to at least provide 125,000 to get to the 10% minimum for community housing.
Matt?
Yeah.
Do you want to wait till the end for questions, or?
If you have questions, I think we could do them right in line. So feel free to interrupt. Yeah.
Okay, if that's okay with Linda. I do have a question on this one.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to understand is, now that we have an affordable housing trust, where are we with that? I don't remember if we've set up that committee, and what the difference in role is going to be between that committee and the CHDC in terms of funding affordable housing.
So I can answer or attempt to answer your questions, Terry. One, that committee has not been seated yet. And when they are seated, they will have a fair amount of work to do to put in. They have to come back to the select board with some housing policy guidelines, and they also have to file with the state. And there's a number of administrative things that they're required to do. That's going to take some time. But even after that's accomplished, as you remember from some of the projects that have come before the select board, it often takes multiple sites, multiple packages of money come from different places in order to accomplish the tasks that need to be done in housing, which is one of the reasons it's such a complicated issue for everyone to understand and get their hands around. So that would be my best, simplest, high-level answer to give you. Susan.
And just to follow up then, what do we have to do to get this committee seated? Is it something the select board is supposed to be doing?
It is, and we are currently working on trying to seat the Junction Village Open Space Committee, because that was first priority and coming from staff in terms of what needed to get done. And we're currently working on that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
My question is, whoa,
Yeah.
a lot of feedback there. My question is, didn't we allocate $500,000 in the September town meeting? And who is and the town manager, I think, is the custodian of those. And I mean, I'm not sure why we're funding both, because it's town money either way.
Yeah, so that pocket of money has already been had some projects assessed against it. And so there is probably about 290,000, something like that, left in that particular fund that currently resides with the town manager with select board approval.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, shall I proceed?
Yes.
Okay, so the next project is the smallest one, which is $14,250 for refurbishing the Emerson Field flagpole. So right now it's got some rust on it, and there's just some other problems with it. So there's an idea to get that done, and the committee liked the proposal and is proposing to support it. The next is the Timothy Wheeler House. 110 Walden Street. This is a historic preservation project. Basically, it's a roof replacement and other repairs that are needed in the facility. The questions that came up on this one were really more about the endowment for that facility, and also just whether or not their operating budget is really covering their regular maintenance expenses and, the kind of role of the CPC relative to the relative maintenance to keep that going. But the committee has come down on the side of supporting that fully. Then the Masonic Lodge right on Monument Square, some similar roof replacement and other repairs, but mostly roof replacement to the tune of $107,000. There, the discussion has really been mostly about the kind of roofing to be used, the materials to be used to get the most historically accurate replacement. And so there may be a revision of the request based upon some discussion there. And then,
Matt?
Yeah.
A question on that one. I remember that a previous CPC, we funded either another portion of the roof or it was the brickwork. Can you remind us what we?
Yeah, there was a repointing of the brickwork, I believe, that was done in the past. And so this is roof work.
Okay, so that was, as I recall, that was one section of the brickwork, maybe half of it. And then there was going to be a phase 2, which I don't know on the brickwork if we ever funded that or not.
Well, apparently this is the priority work because at this point there are leaks and there are buckets and that are collecting water and yeah. And the other thing is that there's going to be a historic structures report that's going to look at the historic integrity of the building and so, but overall, and they are going to close off the skylights, which are a source of some of the trouble here.
Okay.
Okay. The next one is First Parish Church. And this is, yeah.
What was your recommendation on funding of that? Was it partial or full?
It's still sort of up in the air. I think that there is a general feeling of that work needs to get done. It comes back again to business model viability again. Is the organization covering their operational expenses, including repairs? Do they have a way forward? That kind of thing, as opposed to, CPC funding all the stuff. So that's the debate that's been going on.
Still under discussion,
Yes, it's still under discussion. Yeah.
And just one background question. Could you remind me what the total requests were versus the total funds available?
It's around 2.5 million versus, I think, 1.87, somewhere in there net.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
By the way, there was consensus that building is very, important building and deserves preservation. So the First Parish Church, Wright Tavern, which the First Parish owns and has for 134 years, has a proposal to do major structural repairs to that building. Essentially, it is suffering from structural problems and it needs major renovation. As you can see, the request is much larger for this than the others. The discussions that have been happening relative to this proposal is, first of all, that there needs to be a public purpose. And so the trustees of parish donations is discussing that, and they do want to expand the mission of this building to incorporate the public, but they don't yet know exactly how that is going to look. So that's been one point of questioning. The other has been that this is a historically very important building. And so there have been repeated calls to kind of make sure that there is a historic preservation specialist architect that's engaged here. And indeed, they have just done that. So I think that there's more to come on this proposal, both in kind of what the ultimate objective is. Certainly the clear objective is renovation, but the ultimate objective, the reason for having this structure be, partially funded by
Well, I'll do it
CPC.
gently, you're right.
Is coming. Okay, and then the next is the Wheeler Harrington House and Land. So the Wheeler Harrington House is on Harrington Road, and there have been past projects on this that have been to take care of various repairs. This is actually a design project to try to understand what to do next with this building. And it's around $20,000. And indeed, there's also a lease is up at the end of the year, next year. So there really is an opportunity to kind of shift gears in terms of how this building is being used. Currently, it's just being leased to a teacher in town, but it could be turned into more of a public programming space depending upon where it goes. So there really is, this is a plan to try to see where it would go next. So that's being recommended for funding. The next is the White Pond beach improvements. I think that the select board is well aware of that project, so I won't go into great depth on that. The Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, this is actually improvements along the existing, already completed section 2C. What's really happened is as the rail trail is opened, there have been both kind of the punch list of things that weren't quite done right or finished, and then there's just some new opportunities to improve, the amenities along the trail. And so there is a list of those. I don't have them right in front of me, but they were definitely viewed favorably by the committee. The next is Warner Ponds dredging. This is just a continuation of funding towards that project that has been started and is accumulating enough funds to get started relatively soon. The next one is the Old Rifle Range survey and permitting. So the Old Rifle Range Trail in West Concord is an extremely popular trail, but it is actually impassable at times of the year because of it's on the side of a slope and it gets icy and it just really isn't well maintained today. This would be to improve the width and grading of the trail so that it would be far more accessible to people and accessible more year round. But this is actually the survey and permitting phase. There would be a subsequent phase to actually do the work. And that's being recommended for funding. Then the Chamberlain Park Bridge survey and permitting. This is a bridge that you're maybe aware of that's in the parking lot. It goes from the parking lot behind Middlesex Bank and some other places in Concord Center to the park, Chamberlain Park, that's on Lowell Road. And they estimate that the survey and permitting work there would be about $35,000. There would be a subsequent phase in which the bridge, that wooden bridge over kind of a marshy area, would get rebuilt. And there they would hope that they would have some funding, co-funding at least, from the endowment for the park to support that work in that next phase. And so that's recommended. And then,
Matt?
Yeah.
Matt, can I go back to the bridge a minute?
Sure.
So has whoever is the trustees of town donations that
Yeah, that's who owns that endowment. Yeah.
And have they been approached yet or about?
Not for
I know
this
that
phase.
Yeah.
So the idea would be to get the permitting done and then to approach them for the construction costs.
Okay, because in the past there have been projects proposed to them and they've said it doesn't, their funds can't be applied to that. So I think it'd be important to get that information pretty quickly about whether that's even an option down the road.
Okay. And there had been some problems at the very beginning when this bridge was first built, I guess, relative to that.
Matt, can I just
Yeah.
ask a question about both the Old Rifle Range and the Chamberlain Park Bridge survey? Was there any discussion in the discussions about these two projects about doing further education about their the basis for them. I mean, I think, for instance, the Chamberlain Park Bridge that's a relatively unknown. It's not a well-known space for many. So, in other words, is there
it's very
a
hidden.
public education piece to either one of them? For instance, why the old rifle ranges exists. These are ways to maybe increase the conversation around why we're funding them in the first, why they exist.
Yeah, there's been some discussion, certainly about the old rifle range and just maybe improving the kind of interpretive, aspects of the site.
Yep.
So that's an aspect of it, but it hasn't been a big focus. And certainly for the Chamberlain Park, that hasn't been much of the discussion so far. Okay. But I do agree, it's a hidden gem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't figure out how to discuss it, it's going to be hard to.
Right at the moment, it's a hidden diamond in the rough because it's pretty rough.
Ooh.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
No, as you say, I just Jane, to your question, and Matt, when we're through this, I do have Kate and Marcia Rasmussen here as we present our ranking of the projects. We can certainly talk through some of those other details.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I didn't realize that. So, and then the Emerson conservation restriction. So next to the Emerson house, there is a plot of land that the thorough amble goes through. That's land that we would like to conserve in perpetuity. So there has been a proposal to pay towards that conservation easement or restriction. And so the discussion that's gone on about that one has been really about the valuation. So there is an assessed value of the property that's basically less than the cost that's being proposed for the conservation restriction. But the reasoning is because there's been an appraisal and the appraisal was significantly above the assessment. And so there's, I think, continuing discussions on that point, and that's why there's a question mark next to that. I think that there's definitely a sense that that property is a very valuable property to conserve, and also that the funds would be used to help the mission of the Emerson House, which is, of course, is a tourist destination for Concord. And then finally, the administrative costs of staff and technical support for the CPA process, which we always fund.
So Matt, the Emerson conservation restriction, I remember we bought, I think, part one of this or phase one of this for the Emerson Thoreau Amble. If I'm mistaken, is this the part two connected with that?
Well, again, this is not a purchase. It's just a right. Conservation, restriction. But it's related, and certainly it's right there, right. Okay. Next to the meadow and all. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Matt. Stephen, since you said Marcia and was it Delia are present to present the town's rankings?
Yeah.
Should we do that next so that before the select board weighs in?
Yeah, I think so. And so I have Kate and Marcia here. And when, I think my understanding of the process is the town will rank its applications, like town departments that have submitted applications. And then you have a few on here that are not, that are non-town, big T town submissions. They're submitted by other groups, like Right Tavern being a good example of that. And so then we would rank our submissions, so the board as a recommendation or as information to the board, and then I think the request of CPA is for the board to rank all of them, town and non-town. So, and I think, Matt, is that your understanding of what we're supposed to be doing this evening as well, or just make sure I have that right?
Matt, you're on mute.
I did not actually get a comprehensive briefing on how to run this, so I'm just winging it.
Exactly.
Well, Kate, that's how Kate and Marcia described it, and they can certainly are here to correct me wrong. Matt, do you want to unshare?
Sure. Okay.
So we can see each other.
Stephen, I I believe in the past that the town has weighed in only on the projects that the town would be funding, that are to benefit the town. I'm sorry, the town will be funding everything, but as you've done it here.
Yes, and so then I think, like I said, we'll give you our feedback on how, what we submitted, what the organization submitted, and then like I said, when you evaluate all of the projects, you can have that information. So I can go through. So I marked up the report we received from CPA. I kind of put numbers in the left-hand side, so I can either go down in order of the paper, or I can go in order of ranking. I don't know if there's a preference. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a little easier for
Why don't you go in order of ranking?
Sure. Okay. So, items, and they're all like 1-20, 2-20. The -20 is the year. And so I'm not going to reference the year. I'll just say the item on this list. And so off the top, items 6 and 7, which are the RHSO services, and the staff and technical services I view them as must-dos or non-discretionary. We fund those every year, and we rely upon those services for a lot of things for supporting the work of the CPA. So the top-ranked request then in the non-must-do category or non-annually recurring category is the housing production plan, and I think that it's something that obviously is we've spent a lot of time, certainly since I've been here and before, talking about housing production and affordable housing. And I think we need to continue to take advantage of opportunities to really analyze our production and how to maximize that production to achieve community goals.
Jane, would you like to raise a question?
Maybe I'll hold my comments until we comment on this.
Sure.
Okay.
And so that was our first one. And generally, projects that are ongoing or have already received funding or are getting like matching funding or other funding from other sources, those are factors that generally move projects up higher in the priority list. And so White Pond is our second highest ranked priority. Town meeting has affirmed its commitment to the project. And we're going through an extensive planning process to make those proposed improvements. So that is our second priority. Our third would be the Warner's Pond dredging. Again, I think another in concert with the redevelopment of the Giroux property as a recreational amenity, the dredging of the pond is a critically important project for both the environmental health of the pond, as well as its, kind of achieving its highest and best use as a recreational asset as well. So the fourth priority then would be Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Again, this is a project that has really come a very long way, and we're pretty close to finishing it. And so we want to make sure we continue to support it until we do have it 100% complete and a pride of the community that is a linkage, an in-town asset, but also a regionally significant asset. So we want to bring that across the finish line. The fifth is the Chamberlain Park Bridge. It is somewhat hidden, but it is heavily used. And we want to make sure that continues to exist in a state of good repair. Number 6 would be the Emerson conservation restriction. Again, tying to the factors that Matt talked about, tying together Haywood Meadows and the Emerson Thoreau Amble. And we know that, as mentioned, there's some funding coming in from the trustees that will help leverage that project. Sorry. So then 7 is the Wheeler Harrington House. Again, I think that's something we're really looking at the future of the Wheeler Harrington House. We don't believe a rental single family home is the highest and best use of it. And we want to look at a non-residential use and want to get some help to kind of begin to develop that framework for what the future of the Wheeler Harrington House could be. And then 8 would be the Emerson Field flagpole. It technically was submitted on behalf of the town by the Historic District Commission, but we are viewing that essentially as a town submission. It is at Emerson Field, which is one of our primary parks. And then the 9th last is the old rifle range. It's an important project for sure, but one that we're kind of on the front end of. And so we would want to kind of advance the work on the other priorities, as a part of this. So I guess that's my quick rundown. I would invite Kate and Marcia to comment to backfill the things that I surely missed in that brief presentation, or questions from the board.
Jane, did you have a question? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, my computer for some reason is not showing the mute unmute function today, and that's the first for me. So I'd love to hear Marcia and Kate's thoughts. I do, and excuse the serious chocolate guard dog that we have. But I was looking at some of the priority lists, and I had just some general questions. I'm fascinated to know that the Chamberlain Bridge is heavily used. The question I have would be: is it used as a back thoroughfare to get from parking spots to other spaces? Not that would take away from the reason to fund it. Just curious. In terms of the Warner's Pond dredging, and maybe Kate or Marcia knows this question, how far will that take us into the dredging of the pond to make it, is that still, I know Delia has been active in this space. How much of it will it take care of? Because a limited dredging, I guess the question is, how do we tie that dredging, not just to the pond health, but to the recreation goals that the Giroux Park has in mind?
Do you want me to, so the dredging project, sorry, this is Kate Hall, manager. I don't know if you guys can see me. So the dredging project that was proposed is for 2 areas. An area that is essentially part of what the overlook of the Giroux property is right now, similar to where the output drain is from Route 2. And then the existing boat launch area off of Commonwealth Ave. The entire pond dredging would be much too cost prohibitive, obviously. And so this will make, hopefully, we're told that this will make boating, non-motorized boating and paddleboarding much more possible. If you've been out to the Giroux property, certainly in the spring, summer months, the lily pads and other things that we have in there are just so thick that it really has become sort of unusable. So it will do that, but it certainly would not make it suitable for swimming at this time.
And I guess the further question I had is, in the application, it says it's the second and final year to fund dredging. What was dredged previously?
Nothing was dredged previously.
Okay,
Right.
that's my
We have
understanding.
three years worth of both CPC and capital funding that has kind of been stockpiled. And so this is sort of the final step to get the ball rolling here.
Right.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to be clear on.
And this dredging will make the pond viable for another 50 to 100 years. So it's a short-term, to me, it's a short-term investment in the viability of the health of the pond for the recreational boating, but also fishing and maybe even ice skating in the wintertime if we start getting cold again. But there are many, many reasons why this is beneficial for the health of the pond.
Great. I mean, I've been a big fan of the Giroux Pond for a long time, so that's exciting. Of the
Warner's Pond.
Warner's Pond, sorry, too many words. On the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, do we have access to the list of details? Not that I'm sure I support it. I would just be curious to know what kind of amenities we're discovering as we use the trail that we want to add to it.
The application is online under the Community Preservation Committee's website. So that listed a number of different things that we've identified.
Okay.
I should also note that the trail network in that area has grown dramatically recently.
The trail network.
Yeah, there's now a whole different trail that comes in from Old Mill Road. And it goes for quite a ways. And in addition to the one that was put in maybe 3-4 years ago that goes up over the hill further down. Yeah, there's quite a network of trails back there now, much more than just the main trail.
On the Bruce Freeman?
No, at the Old Rifle Range.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about Old
I
Rifle.
understand that from
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a disconnect there for a little while. Okay.
I thought I knew that trail, but.
Sorry.
That's looking at his 2,000 emails, so he's distracted.
Any other questions, Jane?
No, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One is there a submission from the Assabet River pedestrian bridge this year? And if not, why not?
Yeah. Oh, shit. Okay.
I'm sorry, what's the question, Terry?
Oh, I'm wondering about the Assabet River pedestrian bridge, whether they submitted for CPC funds, and if not, why not?
Because we've received a grant, Massachusetts Trails Grant, which provides us with all of the funding necessary to begin the design and permitting. And we've brought the consultant on board, and they're going to get started fairly soon.
Okay,
But until we have final plans and a cost for permitting, we won't know further of what we'll need for construction.
Okay, great. And then my other question is about these dollar figures that are shown. I'm assuming these are not the total amount of the project, but in a lot of cases they have matching funds. So this is the requested funding from the Community Preservation Act. So I want to ask about for several of the projects, like the RHSO and the staff and technical services. Are these half of the amount and the other half comes from the general fund?
For the RHSO, yes, that's half. It's 50% of the total budget. Actually, the budget's larger than that, but we get additional funding through the Metro West Home Consortium and through the Concord Housing Development Corporation. So anything over and above what we normally expend for the RHSO, we get supplemental funding for. There are no, what was the second one?
Oh, the second one is staff and technical services. That's
the 40%. I mean, that's just for $40,000 towards staff. We have a full-time senior planner who's
right, okay.
partially funded through that.
And then the Emerson conservation restriction, someone mentioned that the trustees are also contributing.
Well, the town has set aside funds for that purchase of the conservation restriction, and then the Concord Land Conservation Trust has done some outreach and has offered to put some funding toward it as well.
Okay, so there's 3 sources of funding.
Yes.
The CPC, the Conservation Land Trust, and some money that's already set aside from before.
Yes.
Okay. And do any of the other projects have other matching funds?
So Terry, I think you would be able to look at the applications that are online and determine that,
Okay,
because Marcia certainly cannot speak to all of these.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Matt?
Well, I did still have questions. I have asked questions about the dredging project, and I still have questions about it, which is, at present, the plan is to dredge the stuff out on the side where there's the access road today to the pond off of Commonwealth, and then to truck it around to the agricultural land on the other side of the pond for dewatering. And I just was surprised, just given that, that of the opposite shore, it just seems like if the stuff's going to be dewatered over there, why couldn't it be offloaded right there and just avoid trucking it all around the pond through town? I'm still not quite sure why, but the other thing is, it struck me that the costs of the dredging, there's a lot of overhead costs in setting up the dredging operation, but then the incremental cost of dredging another, few cubic yards of pond is relatively small. And so I guess I didn't understand where the trade-off came of, how much to dredge versus not. I know that there's some issues with the amount of flow in the pond, but it just struck me as this, when you go in there to dredge and you're taking on that cost, you might as well do as much as you can do. It seemed like to me. Otherwise, you're, even if the amount that you do lasts 50 to 100 years, you still got this rest of this pond that's not dredged and still has the lily pads, still has all this other stuff. And it's just like, well, would you feel like, gosh, I wish we had just done more of it? So that's what's on my mind when I look at this. I have one side of me which says, gosh, this is really expensive to do it all. But the other side is that once I do it, I want to really be happy with the result.
If I could just speak to that very briefly. I actually couldn't agree with you more, except for that we went through a fairly robust public process back when we had ESS do the water quality analysis and the sediment loading. And overwhelmingly at the time, we had heard from the community that no, they did not want to have the whole pond. They only wanted the bare minimum. And so basically for X amount of dollars, how much bang could we get for our buck kind of thing. And so we reduced the scope of that to try to have dredging in the largest programmed areas. So it would have been, someplace near Giroux, because we knew at the time we were, itching to get closer to purchasing that at the time. And then also the existing boat launch. And then one of the other factors that came in is the output of Route 2 has a huge amount of sediment that's there. And so that was determined by ESS. But we did have a much larger and more robust plan. But in talking with the community and hearing from people and understanding that, people, would love to be able to give as much money as they can to everything. It was scaled back a bit.
So the objections were around the funding, not about any other issues?
Oh, yeah, there were other issues. And if you go back to the 2012 report, what they identified is that there are other areas where there is certain habitat that they don't want to disturb. So we have a variety of different habitats that the pond provides for different types of wildlife. And so that contributes to the discussion about how much and where these areas were identified.
Okay, because I had trouble with the report understanding that rationale. I did see what they were proposing to do, but not why only there, other than just the flow issue.
There was another group that as well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Marcia, because I actually wasn't working in town at the time, but just from reading it, just being involved in Giroux, that, the neighborhood really liked the idea on the back part of the pond there to kind of leave that as natural as it is. And there was also some habitats of birds and things like Marcia said. And so that wasn't necessarily met with any type of, excitement to alter that in any way.
So a quick follow-up question.
Well, on this topic?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So once this dredging is done, how long do we expect that it will probably last until we have to do it again? Will it last 10 years, 50 years?
Yeah, Marcia had said that it's about, anywhere from 50 to 100 years. It really is a very lasting and worthwhile investment.
Great, thank you.
Susan?
I just had a question about the major source of the sediment is from Route 2. Is that correct?
No, the watershed is the Neshoba Brook watershed, which goes well beyond the town of Concord.
Mhm.
And we have no control over those other communities and the amount of sediment that's being contributed to the Neshoba Brook. We do have the runoff from Route 2, but that's in this particular area near the Giroux Park that is contributing. But it's really what we're getting from upstream in Westford, Acton, and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? All right. Thanks to Kate and to Marcia for fielding our questions here. Would the board like to proceed with giving their general order of priority?
I just wondered, could we bring that back in with us next week's meeting and maybe pull that together then?
Let me think about that for a second. Diane, I see you're raising your hand. It's on this topic specifically. Go ahead.
It is, Linda. Thank you. Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road in Concord. I just wanted to say that there was some discussion about using the dredging soil from the pond for the StarMet, the 229 Main Street project, which is actually looking right now for dirt and sediment. So I think that's an ongoing discussion. I don't know where it is in the town, but I'm on to the CPC and that came up. And that may be an important part of just the financial and environmental considerations. Thank you for taking that comment.
Okay, thank you. All right. So Matt has raised the question about whether we could wait till next Monday to come back to the ranking. How do the other board members feel about that?
I agree with Matt. I'd like to look at this and weigh Stephen and the town's comments against my own initial sense.
Okay, that's good. Anyone else want to comment? Terry?
I just want to note that CPC will not be meeting between now and our next meeting.
Yes, right. Thank you. Terry?
Yes, that would give me a chance to look online, as you say, to check on some more details on these projects.
All right.
Rather than taking up time tonight. But I just want to get clarification. Are we ranking just the town projects the way the town manager did, or are we ranking all the projects?
Typically, we've just ranked the town projects.
So that's what you'd be looking for next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think we'll postpone this then, or table this and come back to this next Monday. Stephen?
I did have one more question, Linda, which is the CHDC considered a town project? Because Stephen did not weigh in on that, but.
I had a similar question, Matt. They obviously are a separate entity, but their members are appointed by the select board. So they're sort of in this, I consider that a very close to being town project myself.
I think we should add it to the ranking personally.
Yeah.
So just to be completely stupid here, the applications included in our packet include more than just the town's options, or are these the entirety of the town's piece?
No, these are all of the projects.
That's what I assumed. So is there a way to easily separate them out other than historic preservation versus other than category?
Yes, it says in the town manager ranking on the left. Do you see that?
Uh-huh.
when you get to the last few, there's no ranking listed.
The
I
last-
understand that doesn't necessarily mean they weren't a town initiative. It just means
So that's what it means. That I think that's what Stephen said.
that, okay, I missed that. I apologize.
Yeah, and the one that Matt and I are pulling out is the Concord Housing Development
Yeah,
Corporation.
exactly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. So there's really three that are
Mhm.
then outside of that.
Okay, that's what my,
Okay, well, Stephen, did you want to make another comment?
Well, well, first of all, I guess I apologize for the CHDC. You know, it was kind of a tweener for me in talking about because we didn't physically fill out the application. We looked at it as kind of a non-town thing. But I mean, all of these projects, no matter who, as I said at the outset, all of them, no matter who actually submitted them, are important for the small T town. But there are just a subset that are submitted by the big T town, meaning the organization. So I'm comfortable either way. My understanding was that the board is supposed to rank all of them, not just the ones submitted by the organization, but I could have that wrong. I'm just reporting back when I asked them what the process is internally. But the other thing is, Matt, when you shared your screen, you had kind of a space for ranking. And I guess what I would recommend is maybe if members could individually do that on their own, maybe between now and Monday night, it may save a little time where if, the top 3 or 4 are pretty close, or you can get into kind of a ranked choice voting and save a lot of time versus kind of hashing out each individual. And that would be my only suggestion.
Well, I would actually ask if each of the select board members could send their rankings to me, I'd be happy to compile them in a common spreadsheet. I've already captured Stevens in the same spreadsheet where we had the CPC's recommended funding value. And so we could just come back with one consolidated spreadsheet with those rankings with a column for each select board member.
The only thing I would suggest, Matt, is if we're going to do that, that should go to Jeremy, and Jeremy should compile that.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
You don't want to run the risk of minimally having an appearance of a open meeting law thing. It's
No
serial
problem.
emails between select board members can be
Less
tricky,
work is
so-
better.
Right. So I would just send that to Jeremy individually, not as a group.
Okay, so
so just to make this even more complicated, Matt, maybe you send the spreadsheet to Jeremy and he sends it to each of us.
Sounds great. I'll send my template to him.
Sorry, Jeremy.
and typically
That's really
we have rated just the town projects.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
gonna stay with that in terms of what we're ranking. All right?
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. And Matt, that was helpful to have the overview from your perspective, and helpful to hear Marcia and Kate as well.
All right.
Okay, so the next agenda item is the committee volunteer subcommittee update. And I know that Matt and Terry and the town manager had a discussion at the most recent subcommittee meeting. And Matt, I know you've generated this wonderful graph. I'm wondering, Terry, do you, and you presented last week, Terry, do you want to present this week, or are you going to defer to Matt?
Sure, I could start and Matt could jump in. Matt did all the grunt work putting it together, and it's beautiful. I want to thank him. So I guess we should share the screen for that. Should I get mine, or do you guys?
I'd be happy to share the screen if everyone's
Okay, great.
okay.
So Matt, just jump in if I.
No problem.
And while he's getting it up, what I'd like to do in order to save time then is I'm not necessarily going to go through every single item unless the board wants me to. There's a lot of items here. Let me give you the overview first. On the left, we have a list of tasks that Matt put into categories. You see the categories are vertical there: recruit candidates, reappoint members, identify vacancies, identify candidates, etc. Those are kind of the grouping of tasks. And then in the specific tasks, yeah, if you could go back up, Matt, for
Yeah, sure.
in the specific tasks, the gray, we felt that we were pretty much all set. But the dark yellow means we really have to develop that. And the light yellow is something that we're doing intermittently, not consistently. So we need to take another look at that. In particular, there's something about number 17. I'll get to that later. So the next group, the select board, Matt divided into chair, liaison, and members. And then the same for the board committee. Chair, current members, new member, and then town moderator is also someone who appoints. Town manager appoints. Sometimes the town clerk has some work to do, sometimes admin staff, and then my thing is blocking. There we go. That's communications director, committee staff, and Minuteman Media Network. So all of these people play a role. Now, if Jane, Linda, and Susan want, we can go through this line by line. But if you prefer, maybe we should just go over the yellow ones and see what we have to work on.
That's what I would prefer.
I mean, first of all, is it relatively clear, just, on the face of it, or is it kind of confusing? That's the question.
Well, some of the colors are hard to differentiate on, for instance, the orange under the town moderator versus the blue.
Yeah, so the blue is stuff the town moderator does for all kinds of committees, and the orange is stuff she would do just for her committees.
Okay.
Overall, I think you did a tremendous job of trying to capture role-specific responsibilities in addition to trying to list all the tasks that happen. I just have up above where you have select board, before you get into the specific items, just a couple format questions, Matt, since you raised it. Members general, I assume you meant the entire select board?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, because it wasn't clear to me when I first looked at it. I was trying to
Just
look
say
at
other members. How about that?
Sure. Great.
No, I don't think that's correct. I think it's entire board.
Okay. All right.
If we don't want to exclude the chair and the liaison.
All right. Yep.
So maybe it will be a little clearer if we look at a specific item. For example, if we skip down to where it says target communications when specific openings and our skills needed. That we felt would best be done by the chair of the committee involved. So that's blue.
And committee staff.
Right, and committee staff. Now, let's go back up to talk about this 17 thing, and I think it'll be clear that way too. So the first one is that one. One suggestion that had been made was to every select board meeting, we would have an agenda item at the beginning of the meeting where the chair or someone would announce the current openings in all committees. So this is the one that Matt has highlighted right now. This is one idea. And we have two other similar ideas, and we don't need all three of them. So the next one, number 17 is,
Oh, sorry. It's
oh, it's not 17 anymore.
It's not, yeah. There we go. 19.
No.
Excuse me.
Well, actually, it's, oh, yeah. Okay. Announce, which one you want to do first?
There we go. 19. Announce vacancies for unexpired terms.
For unexpired terms. So this is something that we would do when committee members resign. And the last one, number 21, highlight vacancies during committee liaison reports. Matt, can you go down to that one?
Yeah, and that's what we're already doing.
That's what we're already doing. So we have sort of these three things that are overlapping. The one that he's got highlighted now, number 19 and number 6. And we don't feel that we need to do all three of these things. So we wanted to bring up a discussion at the board to see, do you want to continue to have liaisons talk about the vacancies? Or do you want to do what it says in line 6, where we add an agenda item and we talk about it every meeting? Or do we want to do what it says in 19? That's probably my last choice, because number 19 only talks about unexpired terms. I think we need to talk about all the different vacancies.
So if we took our current situation right now, we have a list of, I haven't counted exactly, but it's a long list. And, with a reoccurring list agenda item at the beginning of every meeting, I mean, after a while, people are not listening.
I agree, Linda.
Yeah.
I was going to suggest that maybe we could do it in the first meeting of the month on a monthly basis, or the X meeting of the month. I agree that every week is overkill and people will tune out, or quarterly. I don't know. It seems like once a month is not overkill, and it kind of keeps it on your mind, but it's not a weekly reminder.
What if it's in the consent calendar, so we don't have to read it every meeting and take up all this time, but it's in the packet that way, so that the public is seeing it I guess what we're trying to do is get this list publicized as much as possible without spending a lot of time at the select board meeting.
Jane?
I would say another opportunity might be that when we nominate and appoint, we could indicate it in that moment, this is filling the unexpired term that we've been, in other words, show progress, so that it's not just a list of openings, but we're reminding people, okay, now we've seated, now we've appointed or nominated and appointed the open seats.
So you could almost have a placeholder for remaining vacancies.
Right, exactly. It's just a way of tying that loop.
So in other words, a list of the remaining vacancies might be in the packet once a month or once a quarter or whatever.
Or just listed on the agenda, where underneath the nomination section,
right,
and appointment section.
Right, yeah. Because then it ties to where we're already discussing them.
Okay.
Right.
And that actually may help Jeremy as well administratively, because as we're adding an appointment, he can immediately take it off the existing list.
Yep.
Right.
So that. And I would.
Does that seem to match what we're to committee appointments? Sorry. Nominations.
You have a typo there, Mike? Matt?
But Linda, your comment was that it was a very long list and it would take a while to read it. So are you proposing reading it?
No, I would just refer, it could be referred to by the clerk or myself when we get to that section.
Okay, but the list would appear in the packet for the public, right?
Oh, not necessarily. It would appear right on the face of the agenda under board appointments, and it would show the vacancies right there.
Yeah.
A list of the vacancies right there.
Okay.
Which I really think will help administratively as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
If I could just add, while we're talking about this general topic, at every single chairs meeting I'm holding,
Right.
the vacancy issue is coming up on committees, and calling everyone's attention to that and asking them to re-identify where they still have openings, just to make sure.
Correct. And
Consistent.
that is line 20. You are doing a great job on that, and that is in gray, and we didn't feel that we needed to take any further action on line 20 where you're reviewing. So in other words, identifying the vacancies, we think that in line 18 there, distributing the list of vacancies due to term expirations before town meeting. That's being done pretty well. Now, number 19, review vacancies of chairs breakfast. Linda's doing that well. And number 20, highlight vacancies during committee liaison reports. So we may not need number 20 anymore.
Well, no, I just got rid of the one that you wanted to get rid of, what used to be 17 or 19.
Yeah.
I think it's still worth bringing them up at liaison reports, just because we might be able to add color to why or how, or what kind of skills are needed and things like that. Yeah. Okay.
I might also add, and you may already have it here, and I've just not seen the writing, that a reminder from Jeremy to the liaisons, every other month or so, you still have the following vacancies on your committees. Because I know that in the multiple committees that I cover, that's not always part of the committee discussion.
Mm-hmm.
It
That's
often
a great
gets,
suggestion.
if the meeting's gone late, that's not going to make it, the meeting will adjourn before that even if it's on the. So.
Right. I think that's a great suggestion. Yeah. How often should we do that, do you think? Quarterly or something?
I would look to, I don't know, monthly. I mean, again, I realize I'm making more work for Jeremy, and I apologize in advance. I just think it's important to keep us, that's our role, is to be that's one of the things we can give feedback to the committees that we're liaisons to on.
I would agree. I think monthly would be a good time to do that. Maybe just like on the first of every month.
Yep. Okay, great.
Okay.
I just have a question about Linda's comment about embedding the list of vacancies in the agenda under the committee appointments category. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a reminder, is it not? If you have the list of vacancies to us liaisons, that those exist. I mean, it serves that purpose too, correct?
It could, yeah. It's not as pointed, but yes.
No, I just want to clarify my understanding of what we're going to put on, and that would be on a weekly basis or on a per meeting basis. Now it's weekly.
Jane, does that make sense to you, or?
Yeah, I think that's.
So maybe we don't have to do this if we can
Rely on
rely on that
agenda.
Yeah. Okay.
If I may, 2 items above the, let's see.
Have numbers on the left?
Under reappoint members,
Yeah.
and the last item says handle reappointments beyond term limits in exceptional cases.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you wanted to add the entire board there, because exceptions do come to the entire board when we go beyond.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to see where we could, and I think it's implied, but I don't think it's highlighted enough, where the responsibility is for training new board members. And by that, I'm not trying to be overly conscriptive, but it goes beyond the handbook there's got to be some protocols.
Mhm.
You know, committees have a architecture to them.
Yeah.
You haven't been on a town committee before, or if the committees you've been on are very different, you might not know how to, you know, what the rules are. And it goes beyond open meeting law, which is critical, and goes to, you know, practice. What's the practice of the committee, and how does this work? I mean, I see that as a chair of the committee's role, but I'm not trying to be.
Right. I think
This is
we
what this
have that.
row 44 is hopefully covering,
Right.
with new member to discuss community charge and procedures.
Right. I don't know that always happens, though. But I guess I'm trying to offer this as part of also the evaluation of whether somebody is really the committee member, you know, if this is a good fit for everybody. It might be at that point that the committee member said, you know, the potentially nominated individual says, that's not actually, I don't want to be interested. I'm not interested in having.
Yeah, well, here we did it under selection. It doesn't really call out that specific issue, but it just basically you invite them to attend one or more meetings so they kind of get the lay of the land. You might even introduce them, and then you maybe should be interviewing them, you know, which I think hopefully would cover those kinds of processes.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking about a couple of and I think part of the value of this whole practice is then going over it with all of the committees themselves so that everybody's reminded that this isn't that there are guidelines here.
Yeah.
I think you brought up a good point, Jane, in line 44, which is now after the member is selected. I think that line 44 should probably be the light yellow because a lot of the chairs do meet with the new members and go over how things work, but not all of them. And a good reminder if we put that one in the light yellow.
That may help to just, yeah. Okay.
Or I'm wondering if it needs to, I mean, it almost sounds like Jane is suggesting that maybe needs to go earlier.
Well, it happens twice.
With candidate. So
The first time is when we're selecting the candidates. We invite them to a meeting and interview them and evaluate them in lines 31 through 34. So are you saying, Linda, that you want to add explicitly another line that says something about the chair would meet with the candidate and discuss some of the specifics of that committee?
I think it might be going over expectations.
So I think instead of amending this one, because this was an optional part of this, and quite frankly, the part of this that I think is going to be most difficult to sustain because of the time commitment and the coordination on all parts. I think if I could make a suggestion, when it says meet with a new member to discuss committee charge and procedures, I would think that maybe the liaison and the town manager, depending on the appointing authority of the committee, should also have a role in that. Jane, like you said, it's just kind of setting expectations, talking about roles, responsibilities. If it's a town manager commitment, then that would be something that the town manager would do. And if it's a select board committee, it would be something that the liaison would do.
I might suggest, to your point, Stephen, I think I know that as a liaison to town manager, as a select board liaison to town manager appointment committees, I also participated in exactly that conversation. And I think it's helpful. I think it reminds everybody, you know, just goals.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be either or, like either the town manager or the liaison. It certainly can be both. Or one, I mean, it could be either or it could be both, depending on the situation. Sure.
I just have a question. So that wouldn't be part of what the committee chair would discuss with the potential or actual candidate. I'm not sure if you're saying it,
It
How many
wouldn't be
people?
Yeah, sorry, Susan. It wouldn't be a replacement for that conversation. I think it would be a chair may have a different set of expectations for a member than in terms of being a part of the committee and being a part of that team versus the liaison or the town manager who may have more of an overarching set of, expectations for what types of things, more of an orientation type thing. But it's just more, I guess, additional input for the new member. That can be optional. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but sometimes it can be helpful.
Right. I'm glad you asked that question, Susan, also because I realized I didn't explain something well. Let's look at line 44 for a minute. The way Matt's got that here, the dark blue, the chairman of that committee has the main responsibility to meet with the member. That's why it's dark blue, not light blue. And dark blue means the leading role. The light green that the select board liaison have and the light purple that the town manager have is the additional role, the supplementary kind of role. And that's all shown on the key that down here. There's a primary and a support role, and I forgot to explain that. So maybe that makes sense.
Yes, that's helpful. Thank you.
Also, I realized we have a few boxes that have question marks. Like if we go up to line 23,
Yep.
it says on line 23, review cards that identify other committee preferences as necessary. So we're talking about the green cards now. And I think what this refers to is a citizen checked off 3 or 4 or 5 things they're interested in. So they didn't get selected maybe for their first choice. So now we're reviewing their second and third choice. Well, who is doing that reviewing? Is it the liaison? That's why there's a question mark. Who is taking the lead role in this? And how would this review come about?
The other part of that is somebody fills out a green card for 6 committees and they get the first choice or one of their choices, then you want to have a system where they don't keep coming. I mean, it has to be logged in so they don't come up again and in reference to the other 5 committees when there are vacancies. So that's an administrative issue.
Yeah, that's at the end, toward the end, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Down here, we've got maintain the data to reflect committee assignments, so that hopefully would take care of that.
Would that include updating the vacancy list on the town website? Because I noticed you called out.
Good point.
We've got.
Oh, I just saw it.
We had this member recruitment microsite, and I took out the details just to make it fit, but basically that includes a list of openings, link to the green card, maybe a recruitment video. That's why we were hoping to have the Minuteman Media Network help, say, hey, the benefits of serving on a town committee, those kinds of things.
Okay.
But I did see the exact thing Linda just asked about, Matt. If you go back down to the administrative part.
Mm-hmm.
Line 53.
Update committee board roster and terms on town website. There you go.
Right.
But that's the committee board roster. I was wondering in terms. That gets played out on individual committee pages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Whereas updating the vacancy list is on a separate page. So I just didn't want to have that.
Okay. All right. Terms and vacancies. How about that?
Yeah, great. And then under appointments, or let's see, what do you call that category?
Appoint members?
Appoint members. I see in the previous one, you have something, contact selected candidates to notify of nomination. Oh, I see. Send the appointment cards. Good, it's there. Sorry.
Okay.
It turned out there were an awful lot of little details to this. And I think Matt did a really good job of putting in many, many of them.
Absolutely.
Like the balance, we want to get all the details without getting so many details that it's impossible to read the chart and people are overwhelmed. So
I was wondering why the communications director wasn't added to two of the items under identify candidates. So where you have advertised current openings in dark yellow and strive to reach a diverse talent pool of
Oh,
candidates.
yeah, that should be there probably. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
And then the Jeremy's not going to like this suggestion, but
We'll see.
yeah, we'll see. Under recognized members, the first two or three items really need administrative support is what in the past has driven that.
The annual appreciation event. So basically, should we put it down as a supporting role in these first two?
Yeah, minimally.
Minimally? All right.
So getting back to number 23 that we were talking about, we got off track a little bit. Who do you think should review the cards that identify other committee preferences? So what this is supposed to be is, it's in the, we're up to selecting candidates now, right? We have all these green cards. Somebody's got to wade through them.
Yeah, well, first of all, who's got access to the system? I don't even think, I mean, I don't have direct access to that system to look at who's applied for what.
So it's myself and Chris Carmody, and then the town clerk's office have access to the green card system.
Yeah, because it used to be literally a couple of file boxes, and you would go to the town manager, to the town manager's offices,
Look through them.
and gone through them all.
Yeah. So I guess, it's a little hard to be practical to say that the liaison should be doing this when the liaison doesn't have access to the system.
Correct.
Well, is there a process when the green card gets received that it could be forwarded to the liaison, the committee chair, and the appointing authority, or just so, I mean,
Well, this is all about how to ferret out cards that weren't submitted for this particular committee, but somebody is think, well, they were willing to serve on a committee and they have these skills that might be good. And so maybe I can track them down if I'm having a hard time filling the slot. That's what this is about. And, it's kind of probably hard to put that on Jeremy's shoulders. So, but yet I don't know how to accomplish it because nobody else can see what's in there.
Well, wouldn't this kind of be the thing that's like by request? So a committee chair would reach out to me and
say, hey, I'm having a hard time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's definitely doable. I mean, that only takes me, a couple of minutes to actually generate or not even to generate the list of interested candidates. So,
okay.
Yeah.
How about if I say instead like request cards instead of review, Okay. Got it.
Okay.
So Jeremy, you can pull that off of a spreadsheet or something, or?
Yeah, we have it as basically like an Excel sheet.
Yeah, okay, good.
Excellent. Okay.
Just to be clear, Jeremy, we're not talking about, like, if I have an opening on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, I'm not looking for people who applied for Bruce Freeman Rail Trail because you already sent that to me.
Right.
I'm looking for people who might have applied for, I don't know,
Natural resources.
Yeah.
For example. Yeah.
Right.
But in that case, it would still be on the committee chair to request that. Like if they were from Bruce Freeman Rail Trail requesting, maybe somebody they want to see who submitted for planning board to see if anyone's interested in it. Still be
Right. Yeah. But it has to be in the sort of realm of possibility. It wouldn't be the Board of Health. It would be.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So a couple other question marks. Number 27 is advertise current openings. And I have a question mark whether Minuteman Media Network would be able to help us with that or not. I guess we can ask them if you think it's appropriate.
I mean, if we have the comms director, communications director, they could potentially.
Yeah, okay, let's just do that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's in their purview of responsibilities to figure out how to reach them.
How to get it done.
Range.
Okay, good.
All right.
And then the last question marks are number 33 and 34, I think it is.
Interviewing and evaluating candidates, whether the community staff, personnel, town staff should be engaged in that.
That's never happened to the best of my knowledge. It doesn't mean that they're excluded, but.
Right. Yeah, I think that it makes sense to make it not be.
Right.
Okay.
Good.
There. So I guess the question now is, if we're good with this, what are we going to do now? Linda, do you want to take it into the chair's breakfast or something?
Well, I remember earlier we said it would be helpful to have chair's response, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This is a lot.
Yeah, at a chair's breakfast, you don't really have the format to kind of go over something like this.
But what I could do is, and I've done recently with the couple calling their attention to open meeting law, 2 different documents yet again. So what I could do is send this out to them and say this is a draft that you've worked on, and we would welcome feedback before we finalize it and give them a close date to respond.
And I would direct them, because it's a lot, I would direct them to the column that says chair of the committee, so that they're not overwhelmed with all the other committees. They don't need to look at moderator and select board, blah, blah, blah. They can just look at those columns that apply. I mean, they can look at whatever they want.
Yeah. I can do that. Well, thank you both for putting the amount of effort and work and getting this to this point. This is wonderful. It's hard to believe that none of this had been codified many years previously. So this is a real step forward, and it's going to be help to everybody.
And we also thought that maybe this could just be incorporated in App 10 just as a appendix or something, at this point. So we don't need to necessarily come up with a new policy. It's really just a guidance procedure. Yeah.
I think I second Linda's thanks, because this is a massive undertaking, and I agree. I think the more we can just make this part of APP 10 and part of our approach, the better.
Yeah, so
I agree.
We'll put that back on a future agenda after we've gotten feedback from the chairs and another chance to look at it, but that certainly makes sense. Well, thank you. Wonderful. Everybody's input, and especially those of you who worked on this in the subcommittee. Thanks so much. All right. I'm not going to move on to the committee nominations. Madam Clerk. You're on mute. You're on mute, Susan. You're still on mute.
There are no nominations, but there's an appointment. Is that what you're referring to?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Move to appoint John Cooley of 80 Highland Street to the West Concord Advisory Committee for a term to expire April 30th, 2023.
Okay. Is there a second? Jane?
Second.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
and myself, Ms. Bates. Aye.
And that's unanimous, and welcome, John Cooley. And thank you for volunteering for this committee. We're ready for committee liaison reports. Who would like to go first?
It'll be brief. I only had one I had a late week last week, unlike others. And I met with this Council on Aging on the 19th. And as I said to them, they were meeting on the same day and time as Select Board, and they changed their meeting to Thursday at 4, which I'm very grateful for because it's important that one of us be involved. The Rotary donated 1,000 masks to the COA, and they're going to distribute those in January. The COA had delivered 120 meals, or had pickup for 120 meals on Friday, the day after we met, the 20th. They said CCHS on Saturday was going to deliver 250, or there'll be for pickup 250 meals for Concord and Carlisle, and that tomorrow at Open Table there will be another opportunity for a Thanksgiving meal. They acquired 4 iPads, which are going to be able to use for outreach. And the way it would work is they would go to the person's front porch and set up the iPad so the person could immediately see the COA contact person who would be in her car, and they could have a conversation without at a physical distance, but having that that screen picture of the COA rep, and it would be very easy. They open it up, and the person would be on the screen, and there's no, electronic complications. Oh, it says. The other thing is that they're probably not going to be. They do income tax assistance for COA members, but this year it's just not going to be possible because of the physical restrictions. The IRS said you're not allowed to just drop stuff off somewhere, and they're going to keep in touch with AARP to see if they can figure out some way to provide help. But right now it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So, and that's it for me. Thank you.
You know how many they serve in that program typically?
I think it was 120.
Yeah, that's going to leave a lot of seniors,
It is, and they had 6 volunteers who did it, 4 of whom are also seniors. So that they can't meet in the, in the Harvey Wheeler. It's really a difficult situation. They've talked about it the last couple of months to try to figure out a workaround, but nothing has been available or is available at this point.
Susan, do you happen to know if they checked with other surrounding towns to see how they were handling it?
I'm not sure, but they do. They said this is an AARP sponsored program, so they're getting guidance from them. But I can always just shoot a note to the.
I just know this is going to have a huge impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Terry.
Okay, the capital planning task force, we previously announced there's going to be a public forum on December 2nd, but we've rescheduled it to December 9th at 7:30 p.m. We really want to get public input. December 9th, 7:30 p.m. by Zoom for the capital planning task force. The CMLP life plan met, and some good news, the third-party call center for emergencies has been launched. So you'll recall in the last storm, there were some communication issues, and now that we have this call center, we expect things to go a lot smoother for the next storm. Another piece of good news is that broadband is now cash flow positive. So they're making a profit and setting up an annual payback schedule where the broadband Telecom Division is paying back the Electricity Division for their 2013 loan that they took to get launched. And they also held a rate hearing for the upcoming year, 2021. New rates will be going into effect January 1st, based on the cost of service study done by a consultant, Baker Tilly. There'll be a slight increase in residential rates and the tiers are changing. There's a decrease to the small business rate, which will help Concord stay competitive in this region and attract and maintain small businesses.
Matt?
Yeah, is there any talk of time of day rates or anything yet?
Yes, for the time of use rates, they continued that part of the public hearing, and they're going to meet this Tuesday morning to continue that part, because they had already run an hour over schedule. So they had to continue for that.
Actually, I think it's Wednesday morning at 7:30.
Wednesday morning, yes, that's right. Thank you, Linda.
Where this will be discussed, yeah.
Right. The library met and gave a report from the corporation on the construction project. The foundation is being poured and the new opening is visible. The library committee liked the suggestions from the select board that we had on their revised administrative code, and they'll be submitting a new draft to us next month. And the Library Corporation has formed a sustainability planning committee, and there's going to be a town survey that they want people to take on the website. And then finally, I just want to take 1 minute to suggest some future topics for our future agendas. Number one, to discuss an action plan for reaching the select board goals that we developed this year. Another thing is to do the town manager evaluation as soon as possible and set goals for the town manager related to our select board goals. And finally, to have some reports from the town manager on some topics like townhouse renovation project progress and timetable, public-private partnership agreements that are coming up for review, transportation grants and initiatives update. And a thing that came up tonight was the $500,000 for the affordable housing. That's town manager with select board approval. If we could get an update on that. Thank you.
Facilities. Okay, thank you. Who would like to go next?
I can go. We already heard about the Community Preservation Committee in great detail. So the Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee did a debrief on how the Veterans Day thing went. And then I think what they would like to do is now get some guidance from us in the February timeframe as to how to deal with the Honored Citizen event and how to deal eventually with the Patriots Day event next year. Both of these, they don't really need our input yet, but we should start to think about that. In the meantime, they will be sending out some invites for Patriots Day, and then later we'll cancel if they need to. But just in terms of a go, no go, it's sort of the February to March timeframe. So then the recreation.
Yeah. Who are they sending the invitations out to if they're waiting for our input?
No, these are just to the regular parties that are involved in Patriots Day. And like I said, that they will come back for our input and cancel if necessary at that point.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Yeah.
Matt, can I ask a question before you move on to the next committee?
Sure.
And this may be more of a catch-up proactive. Historically, we've had a town tree lighting and
Oh, and the tree lighting, yes.
So
yeah.
And I know, I think the tree's already been lit. So I think that happened in sort of a muddled process. So I wanted to.
Well, it happened in a purposely, not surreptitious, but certainly low-key process. So the goal was to avoid a major public event.
Right.
And so the Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee actually did not, we discussed the event and discussed that it was not going to be an event this year, and did not, engage the town in that, other than just that the tree did get set up. So that one, I forgot to mention that one, but yes, that's.
I've received residents question marks, especially people with younger children. It's obvious,
as to what's happening, and yeah. Okay. So that is a good point, that, maybe to make it more crisp that no, this is not happening, rather than to wait for when the announcement's coming or suddenly.
And that there's a reason. It's not.
So at the last town, if I can just follow up on this in real time here. At the last select board meeting, I thought the town manager said there would not be tree lighting, and unless the, I could be wrong about this, unless the rec department was going to do a drive-by. I could be remembering wrong.
No, I think what we said was, there's not going to be a tree lighting ceremony. The tree lighting will just be, I don't know, I'll have to drive through town on the way home, but I didn't think, I thought maybe it was going to be lit with the rest of the decorations that CMLP had put up.
It was.
It was, right. So
right.
No tree lighting ceremony. I think what we said was the rec department may do their own event, like a trunk or treat type thing for Christmas, or for the holidays rather. But I don't know if that's even happening now. And given the way.
So add that to your town manager's report next Monday then.
Okay.
And Jane, were you looking for more than that on that? Or?
No, it's historically been done on the first Sunday in December.
True.
So that's the context of the questions that have been.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it will not be happening as an event. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Then the Recreation Commission met, and the 2 points of interest there. One is they want to update the strategic plan, and the idea would be, rather than employ a consultant, to really just do it in-house, to really just make updates, factual updates from the last version of the plan, and just looking at the current scope of recreation, that there have been a number of property changes and lots of other things in the last few years, and just to make the plan more relevant. And I pointed them to the comprehensive long-range plan, again, for points of input since the last time that was updated. Then the other recreation news is that the Little League has requested support from the Recreation Commission for putting lighting on the fields at Ripley. And so the idea there was that there'd be kind of a 2-stage process with the Recreation Commission. First of all, just sort of a preliminary support just in concept, and then a later approval of a plan. But they wanted that sort of conceptual approval at the outset to see whether to actually proceed to try to raise the funds and to, try to get other approvals in town. And actually, I have to say, for this lighting project, it's not completely clear to me, nor was it to the commission members, exactly what permits would be required. In the past, I've seen, special permits for these kinds of projects, but I don't know what would trigger it in this particular case. So I think that is something that at least I'm curious about, and I think others should be. But the commission members did give that kind of first stage conceptual approval unanimously to that concept. So, I mean, I asked whether the neighbors have been reached out to or anything like that, and they have not been engaged yet. So, that was, again, going to be after that conceptual go ahead, the idea was then to begin that whole process. So that's, I think, something, worthy of certainly further discussion.
Thank you. Let's see, Jane, did you go yet?
I have not, and I'm going to bore everybody. Well, I hope I'll keep you on your toes. But just as the week before was a light week, this past week has been a heavy week. I attended the Board of Health's meeting last Tuesday, and as it's been referenced, while we talked about it, there was a discussion about well regulation variance, which was passed on Hutchins Farm. The discussion, I think that it's most relevant to everybody, was that of COVID, the rising numbers, and a couple of observations that were made in discussion by the board and our director of public health was that indeed sports, hockey, soccer, but organized sports has been one of the spaces that has created some of the contact tracing, or some of their contact that's been determined to create some of the infections or infection passings, and and again, a reminder to everybody that with Thanksgiving coming up, the regulation that the governor passed to limit family gatherings, ideally to those within your physical home, but limit it to 10, masks on in homes, as well as, outside when it's not, when the gathering doesn't include people who live together. And then there was a discussion of ramping up our vaccine medical reserve corps, which I find as kind of exciting and hopeful, which is starting to think about how many trained personnel we have in our network that can deliver vaccines. And I will continue to follow that with excitement. Then we also heard from Concord Bikes and Bike to School, which they determined that the Board of Health would sign on to the alliance agreement in support of DOT's Safe Routes to School program, something we've already endorsed. And with a few other items, that was the end of the public health discussion, although it's always ongoing. And I think we are all grateful to the work of both the committee and all of the responders in Concord and in the surrounding areas. Then I attended on the 18th, and this is one of the things that's definitely becoming a pattern for me, which is a number of my committees meet almost simultaneously. So I have often had either an iPhone and a computer going. I sometimes feel like I'm not giving anybody a full bill. The Climate Action Advisory Board met, and they also talked about the Safe School Routes initiative and their excitement on that. There was a briefing on the Rocky Mountain Institute's Accelerator for Building Electrification policies by Alice Kaufman and Kate Hanley, our Director of Sustainability. And specific to that, I wanted to alert the board that we will likely be receiving and I would like to put it on a future agenda. I'm trying to pull it up here quickly. There is a fairly, I think we've described it as easily accepted resolution calling for the Massachusetts State Legislature, Department of Public Utilities, Board of Building Regulations and Standards, and the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development to commit to a just transition to building decarbonization in the Commonwealth. It is a non-binding proclamation or resolution, and many towns in the Commonwealth are their boards are adopting this. Again, I have suggested to the team working on this that they reach out first to both Tammy Gouveia and Senator Barrett to get their sign-on and support. I suspect it's already there. But I also anticipate that we'll be seeing that resolution as the select board. The next step in that process will be going forward for a home rule petition endorsing this effort. And Arlington passed that home rule petition at town meeting this past week. So that's moving through supporting nearby towns and similar municipalities. I had to jump off at that point and go to the NRC, and I missed the Director Hanley's discussion of the library sustainability efforts, but I got to pick that up later in the week at another committee. NRC was an interesting conversation. Probably most discussed were the 3 continuances that headlined, which was a application to remove, originally it was 102 trees from the bordering vegetated wetlands and the 100-foot buffer zone on Strawberry Hill Road. That's application's been reduced to 61 trees. And that was, it's still under discussion, but I think the committee had, was satisfied that the trees being removed are all either hazards to the homeowner's home or to the driveway. And in the reconstruction of a dilapidated driveway, will have their root systems destroyed anyway. But it's worth noting because that's a large number of trees. The Fenn School is continuing to push forward its interest in installing a seasonal floating dock, and that continues to be discussed. Especially in terms of the 100-foot buffer zone from the bank and bordering vegetated wetlands, specifically what time of year the dock would be put in and this activities would start, because that might impede, there's a seeding time for the wetlands and for the bank and vegetated area. And so the debate is between whether it starts on April 1st or May 1st in order to allow the land to take seed. And then finally, the most discussed, and I in fact weighed in on, was the Middlesex Schools' interest in installing two more, so that would create 4 artificial turf playing fields. The one that will be most noticeable, it will be the one on Lowell Road, and that will include a 7-foot retaining wall in portions. This has not been finalized by any sense, and this is where I think some of our work together as a select board and our other liaison and reporting entities really help, because as Middlesex discussed the environmental benefits of the turf that they were choosing, I was able to suggest that they look at what Minuteman Tech was looking at for their field, because it's a number of generations closer to something that might be in line with a sustainable approach than the turf that Middlesex was looking at. I don't know how much input we will have, but I would encourage anybody listening to continue that support. And I was able to reach out to our Minuteman Tech School Committee member to get the specific details and get that onto the folks at the NRC. There were a number of other things that I won't go into because it's already long and late. Then on Thursday, the CSEC met, which is a comprehensive sustainability and energy committee. And that is where I was able to get a better sense of the Library Corporation sustainability planning, which is an effort that's being undertook by Kate Hanley, and in coalition with Greener U. And there's a new subcommittee having formed on that, and I'm sure we'll hear more as their planning goes forward. And finally, the White Pond Advisory Committee met, and as I think we've seen in some of our correspondence to date, it was a large discussion of many opinions about the improvements being proposed for White Pond. I think what's clear to me and others is that they're there are too many pieces of information that are not accurate that have continued to be circulated. And I think there's a lot of confusion and fear because White Pond has been such a cherished space, and the movement from something that was a private beach association to a public municipal facility, you know, it carries with it requirements. It also means change, and people understandably react to change with fear before they react to it with anything else. And so I think we're really just going to have to double our efforts to, and I know that the Recreation Department and Kate Hodges have done an enormous amount of work on this. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of work to be done with the neighborhoods to dispel concerns and to get their input, because this is a public process. Nothing's been decided, and I think there's a lot of concern that it's a fait accompli, and nothing could be farther from the case. And in fact, the next public meeting, public discussion on White Pond will be on December 16th, and I know that we're doing a lot of work to make sure that that's a well-attended meeting. And with that, I'm done.
Busy week. You weren't kidding. I had quite a few meetings this week as well. I attended the trustees of donations meeting where they discussed the investment with the investment manager, a review of their portfolio performance to date and their distribution policy. And they hope to secure an archivist intern to assist with locating the original documents for many of these trusts and getting them in a format that people can access more easily. On the 18th, there was a chairs meeting, not as heavily attended as previous ones, but they had already been sent the two open meeting law documents that I referenced, and I called their attention in particular to the quorum definition was dependent on the number of individuals who are meant to be on the committee versus those that have been appointed. I also called their attention to a recent complaint regarding meetings continuing without a quorum, and that Kari Tari had checked with the state, and that particular committee was asked to repeat their entire meeting and discussion in full once they had a quorum. And so I was, and then also called their attention to the second OML document that was released under COVID times in terms of some specific suspension of requirements during COVID. So hopefully chairs now all have that information, and those who attended this meeting who weren't chairs will go back and inquire about that. And again, we referenced the vacancies as well. On November 19th, let's see, I did catch up with the Jenny Dugan committee meeting that was held by HDC, and I thought that was of just importance to be aware of what some of the community questions were there. Jane.
I was just going to say, I apologize. That was the other, I was looking around trying to figure out what was the other missing meeting. And that was, and I was really impressed by the way the HDC members welcomed all of the public input that they got. And again, I think I may become a Jenny Dugan Road voyeur, because now I'm fascinated by all of the houses there, and the fact that the head of the first architect that formed the Acorn concept, that they lived, they built that house, their own house there. I mean, it's a really interesting space.
And I thought it was important just to hear what some of the concerns and questions were from the community, and as well as the HDC's response in terms of how they were handling this. The other interesting thing I'll just note, in addition to Jane's comments, is that there are some deck homes in that area, and they were particularly concerned about how this would impact them. So that was interesting to hear. And then I had a FinCom meeting this week, and the board did decide to not respond to the correspondence that had been sent to them regarding Estabrook Road, so as not to interfere with the actions of the town and the select board on this matter. And then with interest, I caught up with the subcommittee report on the volunteer committee, but we heard a lot about that tonight. So again, thank you to both of you who worked on that. And that concludes my report. Okay. Miscellaneous correspondence. We did receive communication from the League of Women Voters regarding open meeting law as it related to the Transportation Advisory Committee. And also there was a letter referencing citizens, a large group of citizen members who have signed on to a petition regarding the White Pond project. We haven't seen that yet, but there was correspondence addressed to us that referenced that. Okay, and that summarizes. And yes, Jane, you're on mute.
I believe there was also correspondence about 5G.
There was, and that was in the packet.
Right, I meant.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Okay, public comments.
Hello, this is Mark Ailes.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, Mark Ailes, 62 Prescott Road. Hello, thanks very much. I wanted to mention two things. One thing is, well, actually the main thing is just that I attended the last couple of White Pond Advisory meetings and listened to the kind of the hearing that had been done. And I think what I sensed was a couple of things from the members of the committee and the public was, concern that in an effort to kind of build a park, that a lot of trees might be cut down and a lot of the natural surrounding might be removed. And in fact, that might actually create a slope with less absorption and more inflow into the pond that might or might not cause a problem. The other thing is I heard a bit of disagreement between different people about the science of what is causing, pollution, algae bloom, things like that, with, kind of diverse opinions. So I don't know how pinned down that all is, but I think that if major, if a large project is going to be proposed, rather than just a few simple amenities or repairs, that there deserves to be a much larger discussion to address those concerns about possibly injuring that natural resource. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sorry, move to adjourn.
Okay, second. Roll call.
Ms. Escobedo,
Aye.
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Aye.
and myself, Ms. Bates. Aye.
And that's unanimous. Have a happy and safe Thanksgiving, everyone.
You
Thanks,
too.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.